A turn blocking bet is an advanced poker move that we would make if we wanted to see a river card more cheaply. You'd think about making a blocking bet on the turn if you had a straight or a flush draw, and you're almost positive that your opponent will pay you off if you hit that perfect river card. Let's take a look at a hand example to demonstrate the power of a blocking bet on the turn. We'll be seated in the hijack and get dealt Jack of Hearts, 10 of Hearts. It's a good hand in late position, so we raise it 3 times the big blind, and what do you know? The button defends. Everyone else folds, so it's heads up to the flop. We see Ace of Hearts, 8 of Spades, 3 of Hearts. It's actually a pretty good flop for us. We have a flush draw, and we decide to check. We're pretty sure our opponent will continuation bet in position even when he doesn't have an ace. So we're going to check call, hoping to see a heart, or maybe even a jack or a 10 on the turn, and we'll still continue in the hand in that case. The pot's now 1,000, and a big card comes out on the turn. It's not a heart though, unfortunately. So now we're faced actually with a really interesting choice. Do we check again? We'll talk about this on the left side of the frame. Or do we bet? Specifically, do we make a blocking bet to get to see the river cheaply with the intention of stacking our opponent if we hit the perfect card? So let's take a look at the check option first. A check call on the flop followed by a check on the turn is a sign of extreme weakness. So we know that our opponent will bet, and he'll bet strongly, thinking we might have a flush draw, and he needs to price us out of making a call. So let's say he bets 700 chips into the pot of 1,000. The pot then will be 1,700. Let's do some pot odds math to see if we have the explicit pot odds to make this call. The call we're facing 700, and the resulting pot after we make the call would be 1,700 plus 700, or 2,400. That's our pot odds. Let's compare it to our equity, which is 1/5. We have a 20%, just about 20% chance of hitting a heart on the river. Our pot odds are greater than our equity, so unfortunately, we can't make this call based on our explicit pot odds. But does our opponent have any chips left in his stack? Well, on the turn he has 1,700 chips. So when he bets 700, he has 1,000 left behind. And we ask ourselves, might he put all of those 1,000 chips in on the river? Do we have implied odds to make this call? Watch our implied odds video if this isn't clear to you. Let's say he has a hand like Ace-3, and we're just positive he'll stack off to us, even when we hit the heart on the river. He's just too excited to attach to his hand. So we'll still be facing a 700 chip call on the turn. But by the river, we'll actually be winning 3,400 chips for that 700 chip investment. Let's compare that to our 1/5 equity in the hand. Unfortunately, our pot odds are still, even the implied odds, are still slightly bigger than our equity. We can't call. So if we check here, the only correct move is check fold. And that doesn't look so hot, especially since we already check called once on the flop. Let's look at an alternative. Let's look at the blocking bet. And the blocking bet, of course, it's going to be a smaller bet than the bet we have to call if we check call. But we want to make it small enough that we're priced in. We price ourselves in to see the river card cheaply and try to hit our heart. So let's just try 500. It's still going to look reasonable. It's 1/2 the pot. It's going to look reasonable to our opponent. Do we have explicit pot odds when we bet 500? Well, it'll be 500. If our opponent calls, the pot on the turn will be 2,000. Hopefully you can eyeball that and know it's 1/4. Of course, greater than 1/5. So we don't have explicit pot odds. But with our blocking bet, do we have implied odds? 500 turn bet. If our opponent stacks off to us on the river, we'll have won 3,200 chips for that 500 chip investment. Let's compare that to 1/5. And indeed, our implied odds are less than our equity, so we can call. And in fact, you might notice the total prize that we have to win for that 500 chip investment just needs to be greater than 2,500 for it to be a break-even play considering our 20% equity. In summary, a blocking bet on the turn can help you control the pot size, help you control your drawing odds, and actually turn a check call or a check fold where you don't have the odds into a bet and a call from your opponent where you're priced in, you price yourself in to win a massive pot when you hit your heart on the river.